Hi, do you want to know why so many births nowadays end up in interventions? Why so many women, maybe you yourself, had this experience of being really motivated to birth naturally and being determined and preparing your body, preparing your mind for natural birth and even though maybe your birth finished in an emergency C-section or with another intervention. So in this video, I want to show you, and I explained it exactly the same way to my clients with whom I work one-on-one, why births in our times, why modern births are very often extremely painful, sometimes traumatic, and why so many natural births end up in interventions. And I have a two-part approach. So I coined two terms for my clients to understand it very easily. One is setting and one is programming. And just in case you want to understand this video properly, I strongly recommend you to come back to the first two episodes where I explain what are the two biggest misconceptions about brain and the body functioning during birth that will really help you to understand this episode today. So first reason why so many natural births fail in our times is the setting. If we understand the natural physiology of birthing woman, if we understand truly the nature design, and if we know already that the birth needs silence, privacy, intimacy, compared with the intimacy that you need for a sexual interaction, then we understand that all the birthing environments, including even home births, where you are assisted with very often with strangers, with midwives or their assistants that you don't know or you barely know, we can understand that these are not environments that fulfill the conditions, the required conditions for peaceful, natural birth. And so this is a very important part of understanding modern births and also part of why it's so important for women to understand that it was not their fault, it was not their body's fault, they didn't fail. It's just that the setting of the modern birth is very difficult for our primal mammal body to thrive in it, really. So taking it into account, you can say, okay, so there is no really option for women to birth in such a beautiful, peaceful, natural way. But it's not completely true. In my experience, the birth education, understanding your option, understanding how modern births look like, how the hospital procedures look like, can extremely support you in choosing the right options for you and making decisions from a place from that place of having in mind the natural physiology of birth and trying to support it as much as you can. How it can look like, for example, if you know that the hospital environment is not necessarily the most peaceful and intimate space for you to give birth, maybe you would like to go there a bit later in your birth process, not when the first contractions hit, because you know that it might trigger a lot of your brain activity, your neocortex activity, and it might just make you more stressed. Or knowing how many procedures are about to happen in hospital and how many details and information you will have to provide when you arrive. Maybe you can prepare your partner, for example, to help you with it, to support you, to take over this role while you can focus on the birthing process. So I strongly encourage my clients not to look away from the modern birth reality, but rather to deeply dig into it, to understand which procedures can happen and why actually they are used, and do you really need them? Do you have choice? Can you decide differently for yourself? And in my opinion, the birth education is not making you more scared, but really gives you more options to choose from a conscious place. And if you opt for a home birth, I would also recommend you to go out of a fairy tale. This story that home birth is a supernatural, completely undisturbed birth, and to understand that no, you're gonna have medical assistance, and these people, however beautiful they are, and sometimes we can really find beautiful natural or birth workers who are working in a traditional, more traditional way, but still, if they represent the medical system, they are obliged to this system, and they do have some deadlines, and they do have some procedures in their experience and in their system, and they will look for risks. So to also understand that you can ask questions and you can speak with them and you can discuss some aspects of your birth, and you can still be in the center of this experience. And the second reason why so many modern births end up in interventions right now is programming. So this one is not so obvious, and it's more subtle, and also working with it takes more time. So I usually work with women from minimum 6 months, 5 months, all up to even 12 months or 9 months, even starting before the conception, because deprogramming and deconditioning of a female body and feminine mind takes time. So we were born into the world that mostly praises masculine energy, and we've been raised having to adjust to masculine standards of working, of education, and our bodies very often carry a lot of shame and and the restrictions of the just feminine expression. We carry a lot of superstitions about female bodies, about the smells, about the about the blood. And in the birthing process, we are confronted with all of this. It's not something that you can just erase and now become all this natural, superwoman birthing in the wilderness. No, if you were living in this world and you were treating your body in a specific way, if you were yourself ashamed sometimes of your body, if you were hiding your period, if you were taught to hide your period, it will all have influence on your birth. It is not to say that your birth is determined by this, but it takes consciousness and awareness to discern it and to hopefully deprogram it, so to change it, to transform it. And the other part of deprogramming and deconditioning is our own fears. So sometimes they do connect to the social context and generally the fear of birth that was installed in us, all these movie images that we saw of extremely painful births where women are screaming and so on. It's all living in our bodies. It's not just in our mind, but also deeper things and more private things connected to your personal experience of your life, of your childhood. So these are blockages such as traumas, but also certain tendencies of your nervous system that can show up and usually show up during the birthing process. So here I strongly recommend you to work with someone who has somatic experience, who can hold space for you to unwind these patterns, but also to see them, to discern them, to make them more conscious. And with someone who has understanding that these patterns usually show up in your birthing process. So just to have an example, if you tend in your life to withdraw from responsibility or to give up, to think about yourself that you are weak, it might show up and probably will in your birth. If you have the tendency to control in your relationship, for example, you can observe all these patterns very often in your relationship, because this is the space where we, see ourselves the most, right? So if you observe that you are a bit controlling in your relationship, that you have problem with distrust, it can and probably will show up in your birth. And again, I'm not saying that it's all determined, but it is super important to have this awareness to be able to work with it before your birth begins. This is especially important for you if you are the kind of woman who is, interested in all of these conscious birthing information. If you have exposed yourself already to the birth education, to understanding the medicalization of birth in our times, but still, what I observe, and we also know it from this big scandal that took place last year around Free Birth Society, we do see that the birth education is not enough. That it's not simply enough. It's not enough to just know this information and then you can, free birth. For many women, it is not enough. For many women, they really need to look inside a bit deeper. And me personally, I had a client who had this. I was working with her on healing the birth traumas because of such a situation, that she went for a free birth free, without assistance. And even though she finished in an emergency C-section, why? Because of these fears that were not addressed, because of these patterns that were not brought, I don't know how to say it in English, but brought to the light of consciousness before the birth began. So one or another, the setting or the programming can lead to a woman feeling more tense, more stressed, more fearful, and then it's very probable that slowly the interventions will creep in and they can, just evolve into a cascade of interventions. And if you heard that term, so you probably know a bit about it. In the next video, I want to show you what is the usual cascade of interventions in our time, but I will also show you the more subtle interventions that can evolve into this huge cascade. So stay with me. Next video, I'm going to talk all about it. See you there.